December 23rd, 1944. Show 09 to 2 hours, Belgian Ardennes. Lieutenant Hans Weber's breath comes out in frozen clouds as he hunches behind the stone wall, binoculars pressed against his wind-burned face. His fingers, the ones that still have feeling, adjust the focus. Something's wrong. The fog that has blanketed these hills for 6 days is lifting, tearing apart like cotton pulled by invisible hands. And through those tears in the grey ceiling of the world, he sees something that makes his stomach drop. Aircraft, not one, not a flight, a goddamn armada. The sound hits him next. It starts as a distant rumble, like thunder trapped in a barrel, then builds into a roar that drowns out even the German artillery, pounding Bastogne 2 kilometres away. Weber counts under his breath. 10 transports, 20, 40. His count falters. They keep coming, emerging from the breaking clouds in perfect formation, their twin engines catching the first sunlight they've seen in nearly a week. Mein Gott, Weber whispers. His hands start to shake, and it's not from the cold. Beside him, Feldwebel Koch scrambles up with his own binoculars. The sergeant is 38, old enough to remember the First War, old enough to know what he's looking at. His face goes pale under 5 days of grime and stubble. Americans, Koch says. It's not a question. Weber nods. He's 23 years old. 3 months ago, in the briefing tent outside Bitburg, an SS officer assured them the American army was broken, shattered. The Allied advance had stalled. Their supply lines were overstretched. The Ardennes Offensive would cut them in two, recapture Antwerp, change the war's trajectory. That officer didn't mention this. The C-47 Skytrains descend to 500 feet, suicidally low, easy targets for any flak gun with a competent crew. Weber trained on 80D Minimi anti-aircraft artillery before they transferred him to forward observation. He knows exactly how vulnerable those transports are. The Americans know it too. They're coming anyway. The first aircraft reaches the drop zone. Its jump door is already open, a black rectangle against the olive-drab fuselage. Bundles tumble out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the parachutes blossom. Red canopies, white, yellow, blue. They fill the sky like strange flowers blooming in winter. Weber's binoculars track one bundle down, 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 until it disappears into the snow-covered streets of Bastogne. The second aircraft drops, the third, the fourth. They come in waves, 3 abreast, and the parachutes multiply until the sky over Bastogne looks like something from a fever dream. Weber tries to count again. 50 aircraft, 70, 100. His brain refuses the numbers. It's impossible. The Luftwaffe was supposed to own these skies. Where are the Messerschmitts? Where are the Fokker-Wulfs? Then he sees them, but not German aircraft. P-47 Thunderbolts. They orbit the transport formation like wolves around a flock, but these wolves are the protectors. Their distinctive shapes wheel and turn, sunlight glinting off canopies. Weber counts 16 fighters. Then he sees another formation, and another. The Americans have brought enough escorts to challenge an entire Luftwaffe wing. What happens next will shock you, and 94% of people who click away before the 3-minute mark miss the most unbelievable part. Don't be one of them. A German flak battery opens up from the tree line 300 metres to Weber's left. The 80mm guns bark their distinctive crack-boom rhythm. Black puffs of smoke appear among the transports. One C-47 trails smoke from its port engine but holds formation, drops its load, banks away. The P-47s respond instantly. They peel off like birds of prey, noses dropping, and Weber hears the sound that makes every German soldier's blood run cold. The tearing canvas shriek of diving thunderbolts. Their 50 caliber machine guns light up. 8 guns per aircraft, pouring fire at a combined rate of 800 rounds per minute. The tree line where the flak battery hides erupts in geysers of dirt, snow, and shattered pine. The 88s go silent. Coke is muttering something. Weber catches fragments. Told us they were trapped, surrounded, out of supplies. The transports keep coming. Weber's count reaches 150, then 200. His throat is dry, despite the cold. Each of those aircraft carries how much cargo? 1,000 kilograms? More? He does the rough mathematics and feels something crack inside his chest. Not quite hope, not quite despair. Something worse. Certainty. The Americans in Bastogne aren't going to surrender. They were never going to surrender. For 6 days, Weber's unit has been part of the forces encircling that miserable crossroads town. 6 days of constant shelling. 6 days of attacks that met withering defensive fire. His company started with 140 men. This morning, they counted 91 effectives. The American paratroopers, the 101st Airborne, intelligence identified them, were supposed to be starving, freezing, out of ammunition. The sky above him tells a different story. A C-47 passes almost directly overhead, so low Weber can see the crew chief in the jump door, see the man's breath in the frigid air. The aircraft's engines are so loud they make his teeth hurt. More bundles tumble out. The parachutes deploy with audible pops, and Weber tracks them down through his binoculars. He can see the streets of Bastogne now, see figures moving, American soldiers running to recover the supply bundles. They're cheering. Even at this distance, even over the aircraft noise, he can hear them cheering. Some are waving at the transports. One man has torn off his helmet and is spinning it over his head like a lunatic. Before we continue, drop a comment below and tell us. Where in the world are you watching this from? Let's see how far this story reaches. Weber lowers his binoculars. His eyes ache. The sky is still full of aircraft. He's lost count entirely now. There might be 250. There might be 300. The parachutes are so thick over Bastogne, they look like a snowstorm in reverse, falling up into the sky instead of down. Coke has stopped muttering. He's just staring, his binoculars hanging forgotten on their strap. We were told. Coke starts, then stops. His jaw works. They said American industry couldn't sustain this. They said... I know what they said, Weber interrupts. His voice sounds hollow in his own ears. What they said was that Germany was fighting on interior lines, that the Reich's industrial capacity would outlast the Americans' will to fight, that one more push would break the Allied coalition. What they said was a lot of things. The reality is written across the sky in aluminum and canvas and parachute silk. Weber thinks of his unit's supply situation. They've been on half rations for 3 days. Ammunition is rationed, 10 rounds per rifle, 1 grenade per man. Their winter uniforms never arrived. Most of the men are wearing summer-weight tunics stuffed with newspaper for insulation. Yesterday, medical ran out of morphine. The wounded scream. And the Americans? The Americans have 241 goddamn cargo aircraft. Another flak battery tries its luck, this one farther east. The 88s manage 6 shots before the P-47s arrive like the wrath of God. Weber watches the Thunderbolts make their runs, watches their guns flash, watches the flak position disappear in smoke and thunder. The transport formation doesn't even deviate. They just keep coming, keep dropping, keep filling that besieged town with everything its defenders need to hold out. How long, Weber wonders, how long can they keep this up? The answer crystallizes as he watches the 200th aircraft, or is it the 220th, release its load. As long as they want to. The formation starts to thin now. The drop is ending. But even as the C-47s turn for home, even as the last parachutes settle over Bastogne, Weber knows what this means. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't a last-ditch effort to stave off surrender. This was America showing them what it could do. This was a message written in overwhelming industrial might and absolute air superiority. And the message was simple. You can't win. Coke breaks the silence. His voice is very quiet, almost conversational. "We should pull back." Weber doesn't answer. They both know they won't pull back. Their orders are to maintain the siege, to keep attacking, to take Bastogne at any cost. So they'll stay in these frozen fields. They'll keep shelling that town. They'll mount their assaults against men who are no longer starving, no longer undersupplied, no longer cut off from the full weight of American power. The last C-47 disappears into the southern sky, escorted by its protective swarm of fighters. The silence that follows is somehow louder than the engines. Weber raises his binoculars one more time. Over Bastogne, the parachutes are settling like a multicoloured blanket. American soldiers move through the Aiguika streets, hauling bundles, shouting to each other. Even from here, he can feel their renewed energy, their certainty. They know they've won. It's only a matter of time. And Weber, cold, hungry, watching from behind his stone wall, knows it too. The fog is gone. The sky is clear. And written across that crystal blue winter sky is a truth that no propaganda can obscure. The 101st Airborne Division will never surrender. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Because the sky belongs to America now, and everyone, German and American alike, has just watched them prove it. 7 days earlier, December 16th, 1944. 0530 hours, the quiet of the Ardennes forest shatters. Along an 85-mile front, 1,600 German artillery pieces open fire simultaneously. The barrage is so intense it registers on seismographs in Switzerland. American positions, thinly held, considered a quiet sector for green troops and exhausted veterans, disappear in curtains of fire and steel. This is Unternehmen Wacht am Rhein, Operation Watch on the Rhine. Hitler's last gamble in the West. 3 German armies, the 6th Panzer Army, 5th Panzer Army and 7th Army, comprising 200,000 men and 1,000 tanks, pour through the frozen forests. Their objective: reach the Meuse River, capture Antwerp, split the Allied armies, force a negotiated peace. Hitler has scraped together his final strategic reserve. For this moment, everything depends on speed, surprise, and the weather keeping Allied aircraft grounded. For 2 days it works. American lines buckle, then break. Entire regiments are overrun. At places like Schnee-Eifel, thousands surrender. Panic spreads through the rear areas. The bulge that gives the battle its name begins to form on situation maps. A German salient pushing deep into Allied territory. At Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, SHAEF, the gravity becomes clear. This isn't a spoiling attack. This is a full-scale offensive, and it's aimed directly at a road junction that most officers couldn't find on a map 3 days ago. Bastogne. The town is nothing special. 7,000 Belgian civilians, stone buildings clustered around a central square, church spires pointing at grey winter skies. But 7 roads converge there. In the Ardennes, where the terrain is broken forest and steep valleys, roads are everything. Tanks can't maneuver through the woods. Supply columns can't navigate the hills. Whoever controls Bastogne controls movement through the southern Ardennes. Lieutenant General Omar Bradley sees it first. On December 17th, he tells Major General Maxwell Taylor's Chief of Staff, "We need the 101st in Bastogne, yesterday." There's a problem. Taylor is in Washington. His deputy, Brigadier General Gerald Higgins, is in England. Command of the 101st Airborne Division falls to the artillery commander, a short, stocky bulldog of a man named Anthony Clement McAuliffe. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe is 46 years old, from Washington, D.C., a West Point graduate who found his calling in artillery. He's not supposed to be leading the division. He's supposed to be coordinating fire support. But when the orders come down on December 17th, move to Bastogne immediately. McAuliffe doesn't hesitate. His men are in Mourmelon-le-Grand, France. They arrived from Holland 11 days ago, battered from Operation Market Garden. They were promised rest, replacement equipment, hot food, showers. Most haven't received their winter uniforms yet. Many are still wearing the same jumpsuits they wore into Eindhoven. At 20:45 hours on December 17th, the orders hit. Prepare to move. Destination Bastogne. Timeline immediate. Staff Sergeant Michael Stank of Easy Company, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, remembers the moment. He's 22, from Chicago, 3 combat jumps under his belt. He's in town when the whistles blow, recalling men from bars and brothels and warm cafes. "We thought it was a drill," he'll say years later. Some chicken shit officer flexing. Then we saw them loading the trucks with live ammunition. Real ammo, not training rounds. That's when we knew. The 101st loads onto trucks, 380 vehicles in convoy. They're missing half their equipment. Winter clothes, still in supply depots, anti-tank guns, 4 operational guns for the entire division. Ammunition, they grab what they can carry. Medical supplies, enough for maybe 3 days of light contact. Nobody expects a siege. The convoy rolls through the night. Men huddle in open trucks, freezing rain turning to sleet, temperatures dropping towards 0 Fahrenheit. They pass other trucks going the opposite direction. American units retreating in disorder, some without weapons, some without officers. Traffic jams clog the roads. MPs try to maintain order, but chaos is winning. Private First Class Robert Bowen, 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment, watches a Sherman tank crew abandon their vehicle by the roadside. The tank is operational. They're just running. "Where the hell are you going?" Bowen shouts. The tankers don't answer, don't even look back. That's when Bowen understands. Whatever's waiting in Bastogne, it's bad. The first elements of the 101st reach Bastogne on December 18th. McAuliffe arrives to find the town in barely controlled panic. Headquarters personnel are burning documents. The 8th Corps commander, Major General Troy Middleton, is preparing to evacuate. Refugees clog the streets. Belgian civilians fleeing east, American support troops fleeing west. Everyone getting in everyone else's way. Middleton's orders are simple. Hold Bastogne. McAuliffe nods. How long? 48 hours, maybe 72. Patton's turning the Third Army north. He'll break through to you. 3 days. McAuliffe can hold for 3 days. By December 19th, the 101st has established a perimeter, roughly circular, about 4 miles in diameter, anchored on the villages ringing Bastogne. Foy to the north, Marville to the east, Nef, Wadden, Baizori. Names that will be written in blood. They number approximately 10,000 men. The 101st itself, around 11,000 paratroopers, under strength from Market Garden. Supporting elements, tank destroyers, artillery, engineers, stragglers from overrun units who've attached themselves to the defence, bring the total to maybe 18,000. Surrounding them, elements of the 2nd Panzer Division, Panzer Lehr Division, 26th Volksgrenadier Division, and eventually the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division. Estimates vary, but German forces around Bastogne number at least 45,000 combat troops, with more arriving daily. The Americans are outnumbered nearly 5 to 1. By December the 20th, the Germans complete the encirclement. The last road out of Bastogne, a dirt track to the southwest, is cut when German tanks overrun the village of Cibray. Radio crackles. We're surrounded. In the command post, a stone building on the Rue de Neufchâteau, McAuliffe looks at his staff. Someone makes a joke. They've got us surrounded, the poor bastards. Gallows humour. It's all they have, because the supply situation is already critical. The 101st moved with minimal equipment. They were supposed to hold for 3 days, in and out, quick reaction force. But by December 20th, it's clear this won't be quick. Medical supplies run low first. The division surgeon, Major John Pryor, takes inventory. Morphine for maybe 200 casualties. Bandages for 400 wounded. Plasma? They have 50 units. In a battle, they'll go through that in hours. Ammunition is rationed. Lieutenant Colonel Harry Kinnard, McAuliffe's G3 operations officer, issues orders. Rifle ammunition, 10 rounds per engagement unless absolutely necessary. Machine gun crews, short bursts only. Artillery fires only on confirmed targets. The 101st Artillery, 75mm pack howitzers and a few attached 100mm guns, has maybe 2,000 rounds total. A single day of sustained defensive fire could exhaust that. Food becomes critical by December 21st. The men are on 1 meal per day, a thin stew, some bread, coffee if they're lucky. Some units resort to killing Belgian cattle and chickens. Others scavenge German dead for rations. And the cold. God, the cold. Temperatures plunge to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Men dig foxholes in frozen ground that resists entrenching tools like concrete. They have no winter overcoats. Those were supposed to arrive in Mourmelon. They burn furniture from abandoned houses, huddle around small fires that make perfect aiming points for German snipers. Trench foot begins to appear. Frostbite takes fingers and toes. Men wrap their feet in burlap sacks, stuff newspaper inside their jackets, share blankets in shifts. 2 hours sleep, 2 hours freezing. Rotate. The German artillery never stops. It's not a barrage. They can't afford to waste shells. It's a steady harassment. Every 10 minutes, a few shells drop somewhere in the perimeter. Nobody sleeps for more than 30 minutes at a stretch. The concussions rattle teeth, collapse dugouts, fray nerves to breaking. And the attacks come. December 20th, Germans probe the eastern sector. The 501st PIR throws them back. December 21st, a coordinated assault from 3 directions. Tank destroyers, precious only 12 operational, knock out German armour at point-blank range. The line holds, barely. December 22nd, the Germans try the southern approaches. Fighting in Marvy goes house to house, room to room. Sergeant Bowen bayonets a German in a kitchen, finds himself staring at family photographs on the wall, a child's toy on the floor. He vomits outside, then returns to the fighting. By December 22nd, the situation is desperate. Ammunition, 40% remaining medical supplies, critically low food, 1 meal per day, maybe 2 days' worth left. Casualties, 600 wounded, 100 dead. Numbers climbing, artillery shells, enough for maybe 6 more fire missions. Air support, 0. Fog hasn't lifted in 6 days. Relief force still somewhere south, pattern fighting through German resistance. That afternoon, 4 German officers approach under a white flag. They carry an ultimatum. McAuliffe reads it in his command post. The Germans offer the honourable surrender of Bastogne. They note the American position is hopeless. They promise fair treatment as prisoners of war. They warn that refusal will result in total annihilation. McAuliffe crumples the paper. His response is one word: nuts. The German envoys don't understand the slang. Colonel Joseph Harper, delivering the reply, explains, "It means go to hell." The story spreads through the perimeter within hours. Men laugh, actually laugh, despite everything. Nuts becomes a battle cry, a middle finger to despair. But privately, McAuliffe knows the truth. Without resupply, they have maybe 48 hours before ammunition runs out. 72 hours before they're starving. 4 days before the wounded start dying from preventable infections. His only hope sits on airfields in England and France. Transport aircraft, cargo loaded, pilots waiting. All they need is one thing. Clear skies. December 19th, 1944. 14:20 hours. Membry Airfield, England. Captain James "Jimmy" Schultz stands on the frozen tarmac, watching ground crews load his C-47. He's 27 years old, from Milwaukee, a commercial pilot before the war who flew mail routes across Wisconsin. Now he flies a Skytrain with the 439th Troop Carrier Group, and the cargo going into his aircraft isn't mail, it's war. Schultz counts the bundles as they disappear into the fuselage, ammunition crates, each stenciled with calibre and quantity. Medical supplies in padded containers, K rations by the hundreds. Bundles of winter clothing, the overcoats and boots that were supposed to reach the 101st weeks ago. Artillery shells, carefully secured. Radio batteries. Morphine, sulphur drugs. Plasma. Everything and surrounded division needs to survive. His crew chief, Sergeant Mike Torelli, supervises the loading with obsessive precision. Weight distribution is critical. Too much weight aft, and the C-47 becomes tail-heavy, dangerous to fly. Too much forward, and it won't climb. Every bundle must be positioned exactly, secured with cargo straps that Torelli tests personally, yanking with his full body weight. "How much?" Schultz asks. Torelli checks his clipboard. 3 tons. Right at max capacity, skipper." Schultz nods. The C-47 can carry 6,000 pounds safely. They're loading 6 to 200. Not dangerous exactly, but it'll make the aircraft sluggish, slow to respond. If they have to manoeuvre aggressively, say dodging German fighters or anti-aircraft fire, they'll have to dump cargo first, if they can. "Weather update?" Schultz asks. Torelli's expression answers before his words do. Still socked in over Belgium, ceiling 00, visibility quarter mile in fog. Schultz looks at the sky over England. It's clear here, cold and bright, perfect flying weather. But between Membry and Bastogne lie 300 miles of cloud-covered France and the permanently fog-shrouded Ardennes. The meteorology officers brief the same report twice daily. No change expected. Front stalled. Visibility impossible for precision drops. His C-47 has been loaded for 4 days. Waiting. All across England and France, the scene repeats. At Welford, Aldermaston, Ramsbury, Greenham Common, airfields whose names will be forgotten except by the men who flew from them. Ground crews load C-47s with supplies for Bastogne. At bases in France, Mourmelon, now evacuated, Orléans-Brissy, Châteaudun. More Skytrains sit ready. The Nice Troop Carrier Command has assembled 241 aircraft. The commanders call it Operation Repulse. The planners call it the largest aerial resupply mission of the war. The pilots call it something else, a suicide run. December 20th, 1944. 9 Troop Carrier Command Headquarters, Grantham, England. Brigadier General Harold L. Clark stands over a map table, studying the route for the 100th time. He commands the 1st Pathfinder Group, provisional, the unit responsible for marking drop zones and coordinating aerial resupply. Clark is 38, a career officer, and he knows transport aviation like some men know scripture. What he's looking at violates every principle of safe air operations. The route, England to Belgium, 300 miles over potentially hostile territory. The transports will fly in formation. Tight formation, necessary for concentrated drops, but dangerous in anything less than perfect visibility. They'll descend to 500 feet over Bastogne, low enough for accurate drops, low enough for every German with a rifle to take pot shots. The drop zone is less than 2 miles in diameter, surrounded by German forces, and they'll do it in daylight. In full view of German anti-aircraft batteries, with German fighters potentially in the area. Clark's operations officer, Colonel Joseph Crouch, traces the route with his finger. If the weather breaks, we can put 250 aircraft over Bastogne in 3 hours, maybe less. If the weather breaks, Clark repeats, forecast says maybe the 23rd. High pressure system moving in. Maybe. Crouch meets his gaze. Sir, if we don't get supplies to the 101st soon, there won't be a 101st to resupply. Clark knows. Everyone knows. The radio messages from Bastogne paint a grim picture. Ammunition critical, Medical supplies exhausted, food running out. McAuliffe staff send supply requests that read like shopping lists from hell, with 30 caliber ammunition, 1,000 rounds, 45 caliber ammunition, 100,000 rounds, 75mm HE shells, 2,000 rounds, morphine, 500 Cyrets, plasma, 1,000 units, bandages, 10,000 rations, 50,000 meals, gasoline, 10,000 gallons. The list goes on, 3 pages, single-spaced. Casualty estimates? Clark asks, though he knows the answer. Crouch hesitates. Best case, if we have complete fighter escort and the German flak is light, 10% losses, maybe 8 aircraft. Worst case, 30%, maybe 40 if the Luftwaffe shows up in force, 96 aircraft, nearly 1,000 aircrew. The math is brutal. But the alternative is worse, an entire division lost, 10,000 men dead or captured. The Bastogne road junction in German hands, the southern shoulder of the Ardennes Offensive open. Patton's counterattack flanked. We go when the weather clears, Clark says. Get the word to all groups. Crews on standby. I want engines turning 30 minutes after we get visibility. December 21st, 1944. 0600 hours. Briefing room, 439th Troop Carrier Group. Captain Schultz sits on a wooden bench, coffee mug warming his hands, listening to the intelligence officer describe what's waiting over Bastogne. The briefing room smells like coffee, cigarette smoke, and the peculiar tension that precedes dangerous missions. Major Robert Crandall points to a map with a wooden stick. Red circles mark known German flak positions. There are dozens, 80mm batteries, quad-mounted 20mm cannons, even heavier 105mm guns. The circles form a nearly solid ring around Bastogne. Every German gun within 5 miles will be shooting at you, Crandall says matter-of-factly. Effective altitude of the 88 in Meade is 26,000 feet. You'll be at 500 feet. You're well within their envelope. A pilot in the back, Lieutenant Davies, 22 years old, new replacement, raises his hand. What about fighter cover? Fader Fighter Command is assigning escort P-47s from the 362nd, 365th and 368th Fighter Groups, maybe 200 fighters total. Their job is to suppress flak and engage any Luftwaffe that shows up. Will that be enough? Crandall doesn't sugarcoat it. Maybe. The Germans have pulled back most of their fighters to defend the Reich against heavy bomber raids. But they've got airfields in the area. If they scramble everything they have, it could get ugly. The room goes quiet. Schultz looks around at the faces. Most are young, mid-20s at most. A few old hands like him, veterans of the Sicily drops, Normandy, Market Garden. They've done this before, flown into hell, dropped paratroopers or supplies, flown back out. But this feels different. In Sicily, they had surprise. At Normandy, they had darkness. Market Garden was chaos, but at least the drop zones weren't completely surrounded. Bastogne is surrounded, in daylight, and everyone shooting at them will be German. Approach altitude is 500 feet AGL, Crandall continues. Drop speed 110 knots. Formation will be 3 abreast, trail spacing 1,000 feet. The entire formation will make one pass. Drop everything, no second chances. Time over target, approximately 15 minutes for the full group. 15 minutes. Schultz does the math. 15 minutes exposed to every gun the Germans have. 15 minutes flying straight and level, unable to manoeuvre, sitting ducks. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Frank Morrison, leans close. You ever wonder why we didn't wash out and join the infantry? Schultz almost laughs. Every damn day. The briefing continues. Radio frequencies, recognition signals, emergency procedures. If shot down over friendly territory, try to reach Allied lines. If shot down over German territory, evade and escape. If wounded and able to fly, maintain formation until clear of the combat zone. If the aircraft is too damaged to make it back, try to crash land in friendly territory. The subtext is clear. Don't expect to be rescued quickly. At 0700 hours, they're dismissed. Stand by for weather updates. We launch when visibility reaches minimum standards. Schultz walks back to his aircraft in the thin morning light. Frost covers the C-47's wings. The ground crew has the engines covered with tarps to keep them warm. Everything is ready. They've been ready for days. Waiting. December 22nd, 1944, 1800 hours, Meteorology Office, Nîmes Troop Carrier Command. Captain Irving Crick stares at the weather chart spread across his desk. He's the chief meteorologist for the command, and right now he's the most important officer in the European theatre who isn't a general. The high-pressure system is moving. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, but moving. The fog bank that has covered the Ardennes for 6 days is finally starting to break up. Crick traces the isobars with his finger. If the high continues its current track, the Ardennes could be clear by the morning of December the 23rd. Not guaranteed. Weather forecasting in 1944 is more art than science, but possible. His phone rings. It's General Clark. "Tell me something good, Captain." "Sir, I think we'll have a window tomorrow morning. Maybe 0900 hours, maybe earlier. Ceiling should lift to at least 3,000 feet. Visibility 5 miles or better." There's a pause. Crick hears Clark breathing on the other end. Hears the weight of the decision being made. "How confident are you?" Crick looks at his charts, at the data points from weather stations across France. At the satellite, no, there are no satellites in 1944. At the surface observations, the upper air, readings, the pilot reports, all of it pointing to the same conclusion. 70%, sir, maybe 75. Another pause. 25% chance the weather stays bad. 25% chance they launch 241 aircraft into fog and clouds, unable to find their targets, potentially colliding mid-air, all for nothing. But 100% chance the 101st runs out of supplies if they don't try. "Tell the groups," Clark says, "we're going tomorrow. Engines start at 0830. First aircraft airborne by 0900. "Yes, sir." Clark hangs up. Crick sits at his desk for a moment staring at the charts. He's bet the lives of thousands of men on weather patterns and barometric pressure. If he's wrong, if the fog doesn't lift, if visibility stays 00. He doesn't let himself finish the thought. Instead, he picks up his phone and starts calling the air bases. Membury first, then Welford, then down the list. At each base, operations officers answer. At each base, Crick delivers the same message. "Tomorrow morning, be ready." At Membury, Captain Schultz gets the word at 1830 hours. He's in the officers' mess, pushing watery potatoes around his plate when Lieutenant Morrison finds him. "We're going tomorrow. 0900 takeoff." Schultz sets down his fork. His appetite, already minimal, disappears entirely. "Weather's clearing?" That's what they say. Schultz nods. Around the mess hall, the word spreads. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Men look at each other, expressions ranging from relief to dread. They've been waiting for this, preparing for this, dreading this. Now it's happening. Schultz goes to his bunk early. He tries to sleep but can't. His mind runs through the mission profile. Takeoff, form up over Reading, join the main formation, cross the Channel, navigate over France, find Bastogne. The pathfinders will mark it with coloured smoke. Descend to 500 feet. Hold steady through the flak. Watch the cargo bundles tumble out. Climb away, navigate home. Simple in theory. In practice, he'll be flying a 3-ton cargo plane loaded to maximum capacity at 500 feet over German-held territory, in formation so tight that his wingtip will be 50 feet from the next aircraft. German 88mm guns will be firing at him. German 20mm quad mounts will be firing at him. Maybe German fighters will be diving at him. And he'll have to hold the aircraft absolutely steady, 110 knots, 500 feet, wings level, while his crew kicks the cargo bundles out the door for 15 minutes. Schultz stares at the ceiling of his Nissen hut. Somewhere in Belgium, American paratroopers are freezing in foxholes, waiting for help that he and 240 other transport pilots are supposed to deliver. No pressure. He finally falls asleep around 0200, dreaming of flak and fog and falling. At 0530, someone shakes him awake. "Schultz, Captain Schultz, wake up, sir." He opens his eyes. Sergeant Torelli stands over him, fully dressed, expression urgent. "What?" "Fog's lifting, sir. Met. Office confirms it. We're going." Schultz swings his legs out of bed. His hands are steady. That surprises him. He thought they'd shake, but they're steady as he dresses, steady as he eats breakfast. He manages half a piece of toast, steady as he walks to the flight line. His C-47 waits in the pre-dawn darkness. Ground crew has already pulled the engine covers, run the pre-flight checks. The cargo, 3 tons of supplies for the 101st, sits secured in the fuselage. Morrison is already in the cockpit running checklists. "Morning, Frank." "Morning, Skipper. Hell of a day for a flight." "Hell of a day," Schultz agrees. At 0830 hours the engines start. The Wright R-1820 Cyclone radials cough, sputter, then catch with their distinctive roar. Across Membury, across all the bases, hundreds of engines thunder to life. The sound is like God clearing his throat. At 0845, the tower clears them to taxi. At 0900, the first C-47 lifts off. By 0915, the sky over southern England is filled with aircraft, formations stacking up, tightening their spacing, turning toward the Channel and the continent beyond. 241 aircraft, 750 aircrew, 850 tons of supplies. And somewhere ahead, through the breaking fog, Bastogne waits. Captain Jimmy Schultz, commercial pilot from Milwaukee, points his C-47 east and follows the formation into the winter sky. His hands are steady on the yoke. His breathing is even. But his heart is pounding like a drum, because somewhere ahead, through clear skies for the first time in a week, the German army is about to see what American industrial might looks like when it's angry. And Jimmy Schultz has a front row seat. December 19th, 22nd, 1944. The perimeter, Bastogne. Time moves differently when you're surrounded. Private First Class Eugene Rowe learned this in his aid station, a stone basement on the Rue de Neuchâtel that smells like blood and gangrene and men dying slowly. Rowe is the 506th medic, 23 years old, from Bayou Chene, Louisiana. He's treated wounded since Normandy, seen men torn apart by shells and bullets and mines, but he's never run out of morphine before. The last Surrette went into a sergeant from Dog Company at 1400 hours on December 21st. The man had taken shrapnel through his abdomen, intestines perforated, peritonitis setting in. Without morphine, he screamed for 6 hours before he died. Rowe listened to every minute of it. Now it's December 22nd, and the wounded keep coming. A private with a leg wound that's already infected, pus and red streaks climbing toward his groin. A lieutenant with frostbite so severe his toes are black and starting to smell like death. A radio man with a sucking chest wound that Rowe plugs with a wrapper from a cigarette pack because he's out of proper chest seals. "When are the planes coming?" the radio man asks. His lips are blue. "Soon," Rowe lies. The fog outside is so thick you can't see across the street. Rowe has watched it for 4 days, willing it to clear. Because clear. Skies mean aircraft. Aircraft mean supplies. Supplies mean morphine and plasma, and bandages and sulfur drugs, and all the things that keep men alive. The fog doesn't care what he wants. 300 yards away, in a foxhole facing northeast toward Foy, Corporal Donald Malarkey of Easy Company hasn't slept in 48 hours. Every time he closes his eyes, German artillery finds his section of the line. Not a barrage, just a few shells, precisely placed every hour or two. Harassment fire, designed to prevent sleep, fray nerves, break morale. It's working. Malarkey is from Astoria, Oregon, a guy who used to play football and chase girls and think the biggest problem in life was whether to go to college or get a job. That was 1942. Now it's 1944, and the biggest problem is whether the next shell has his name on it. He shares the foxhole with Private Albert Blythe, a replacement who arrived just before Market Garden. Blythe is 19, scared, trying not to show it. He hasn't eaten in 24 hours, gave his half ration to a wounded man yesterday. Now his hands shake from hunger and cold and fear. "You think Patton's really coming?" Blythe asks. "Yeah." "When?" Malarkey doesn't answer. Nobody knows when. The radio reports say Patton's Third Army is fighting north through German resistance. Could be 3 days. Could be a week. Could be never. The foxhole has 6 inches of ice water at the bottom. Their boots have been wet for 4 days. Malarkey can't feel his toes anymore. He's pretty sure that's bad, but he can't do anything about it, so he doesn't think about it. A shell screams in. They huddle against the frozen earth as it detonates 50 yards behind them. Frozen dirt and shrapnel rain down. When silence returns, Blythe is crying quietly. Malarkey pretends not to notice. In the German lines, the waiting is different, but no less brutal. Lieutenant Hans Weber, the artillery observer who will witness the aerial armada, huddles in a stone barn with his observation team. They've been shelling Bastogne for 4 days, and the Americans show no signs of breaking. Yesterday, Weber's battery commander told him the Americans were out of supplies. "They're eating their dead," the commander said. "One more push, and they'll surrender." But the push this morning met the same withering fire as every previous attack. The Americans aren't out of ammunition. They're rationing it, yes, firing in disciplined bursts instead of sustained suppression. But they're not out. And their morale. Weber listened to them over a captured radio last night. American voices, joking, laughing. Someone sang a Christmas carol. These aren't men about to surrender. Weber stares at the fog outside his observation post. The weather has grounded German aircraft too. Not that the Luftwaffe has many to spare, but it's also grounding American aircraft, keeping the encircled paratroopers cut off from resupply. If the weather stays bad for another week, maybe 2, the American NUTS will run out of everything. Then they'll have to surrender. If the weather clears, Weber doesn't let himself finish that thought. December 22nd, 1945 hours. Bastogne Command Post. General McAuliffe studies the supply reports by candlelight. The numbers are brutal. Ammunition status, 30 caliber, 24% remaining. 45 caliber, 18% remaining 75 Billings. Enough for 4 fire missions. 81mm mortar, 3 rounds per tube. Grenades, 1 per man. Medical supplies, morphine, 0 plasma, 12 units bandages, scavenged from German dead sulfur drugs, enough for 20 men. Food, K-rations, half meal per man, 2 days remaining, local procurement, 14 cattle, 30 chickens, exhausted. Casualties, KIA, 189, WIA, 782. MIA, 96, non-battle injuries, frostbite, trench foot, 341. McAuliffe sets down the reports. His artillery commander, Colonel Thomas Sherburne, waits for orders. Weather forecast? McAuliffe asks. Clearing tomorrow. Maybe. Maybe. That's what they say, sir. McAuliffe walks to the window. Fog presses against the glass like a living thing. For 6 days, that fog has been their prison. It keeps German aircraft grounded, yes, but it also keeps American aircraft grounded. And right now, the 101st needs supply aircraft more than they fear German bombers. If it clears tomorrow, McAuliffe says slowly, and the Air Corps gets through, we can hold indefinitely. Yes, sir. If it doesn't clear, Sherburne finishes the thought, 48 hours, maybe 72, then we're Winchester. Military slang for out of ammunition. McAuliffe nods. Winchester. The word every commander fears. Because after Winchester comes surrender or annihilation, and McAuliffe has already told the Germans what they can do with their surrender demand. Nuts, he mutters, almost smiling. Sherburne smiles too, though it doesn't reach his eyes. Nuts, sir. 2300 hours. The fog thins slightly. Private Rowe steps outside the aid station for air that doesn't smell like death. He looks up, but there's nothing to see, just fog and darkness and the occasional flare arcing across no man's land. Somewhere beyond that fog, beyond the darkness, American transport aircraft wait on English airfields. Rowe knows this because McAuliffe told the troops yesterday. Help is coming. The Air Corps is standing by. We just need the weather to clear. The men believe it because they have to. Rowe believes it because the alternative is watching more men scream themselves to death for lack of morphine. He stands in the cold for 5 minutes, then returns to his aid station. 3 new wounded have arrived. A machine gunner with a shattered arm, a lieutenant with both legs broken by an 88mm shell, a rifleman who took a bullet through his shoulder. Sorry, Rowe tells them, no morphine. I can splint the brakes, bandage the wounds, but the pain. The lieutenant nods. His face is grey, slick with sweat despite the cold. Do what you can, Doc. Rowe does what he can. It's not enough. It's never enough. But maybe, tomorrow, if the fog lifts, if the aircraft come, if the supplies get through, maybe tomorrow it will be. Midnight, December 23rd, 1944. In Bastogne, the men of the 101st huddle in their foxholes and cellars and frozen outposts, waiting for dawn. In England and France, 241 C-47 pilots sleep fitfully in their bunks, waiting for the call to scramble. In German observation posts ringing the perimeter, artillerymen and infantry officers watch the fog begin, just slightly, almost imperceptibly, to thin. The weather is changing. The high-pressure system Captain Crick predicted is moving in. The fog that has grounded all air operations for 6 days is lifting. In 6 hours, maybe 7, the skies over the Ardennes will be clear for the first time since December the 16th, and then the world will see what happens when American air power decides to feed a surrounded division. The waiting is almost over. The spectacle is about to begin. December 23rd, 1944. 192 hours, 500 feet above Bastogne. The fog breaks like a curtain pulled aside. Captain Jimmy Schultz sees it happen in real time. One moment he's flying through grey nothingness, trusting his instruments and the aircraft ahead. The next moment, the world appears. Below, snow-covered fields, black forests, the stone buildings of Bastogne clustered like a medieval fortress. Above, blue sky, winter sun, and 240 other C-47s stretched across the horizon in the most beautiful, terrifying formation he's ever seen. Jesus Christ, Morrison breathes from the co-pilot's seat. Schultz keys his mic. Pathfinder, this is Chalk 4-2, target in sight. Roger, 4-2, drop zone marked with green smoke. You are cleared hot. Green smoke rises from the centre of Bastogne, the Pathfinder's on the ground marking the target. Schultz adjusts his approach, dropping to exactly 500 feet, throttling back to 110 knots. The C-47 behind him tightens up, 50 feet off his tail. The aircraft to his right flies so close he can see the pilot's face. Cargo crew, stand by, Schultz calls over the intercom. Sergeant Torelli and 2 privates position themselves by the cargo door. They've already opened it. Frigid air howls through the fuselage at 110 knots. The bundles are lined up, attached to static lines that will deploy the parachutes automatically when they're kicked out. Schultz holds the aircraft steady. Wings level. Airspeed constant. Altitude precise. Then the German guns open fire. The first burst is 20 mm, a string of traces that rises from the tree line like glowing pearls. It passes 50 feet in front of Schultz's nose. He doesn't flinch, doesn't deviate. He holds course. More guns join in. 82 for Remimente flak bursts blossom across the sky. Black puffs that mark where shells explode. The concussions rock the C-47. Shrapnel pings off the aluminum skin. A hole appears in the port wing, sunlight streaming through. Schultz holds steady. 30 seconds to drop, he calls. Morrison's hands are white-knuckled on his control yoke. They're everywhere, Jimmy. Flak everywhere. I know. Hold formation. To the left, a C-47 takes a direct hit. The 80 mm shell tears through the cockpit. The aircraft noses down, streaming fire, and impacts in the snow 2 miles from Bastogne. No parachutes. Schultz doesn't watch. He can't afford to watch. 10 seconds. Below, American paratroopers pour out of foxholes and buildings. Even at 500 feet, through the flak and chaos, Schultz can see them. Tiny figures, jumping, waving, some throwing helmets in the air. They're cheering. He can't hear them over the engines and gunfire, but he knows they're cheering. Drop, drop, drop. Torelli kicks the first bundle. It tumbles out the door, the static line deploying a red parachute. The second bundle follows. White parachute. Third, yellow. Fourth, blue. They fall away in perfect sequence, each canopy blossoming, each cargo bundle swinging beneath. All across the sky, 241 aircraft dump their loads simultaneously. It's the most incredible thing Schultz has ever seen. Parachutes by the hundreds, maybe thousands, filling the air over Bastogne. Red, white, blue, yellow, green. They look like confetti thrown by giants. Each bundle carries ammunition, food, medical supplies, winter clothing, everything the 101st needs to survive. The P-47 escorts earn their pay. Schultz glimpses them diving on German positions, 8 50 caliber machine guns per fighter pouring fire into the flak batteries. Guns that were shooting at the transports go silent. Guns that don't go silent get cratered by 500-pound bombs. American fighter pilots are pissed off, and they're making it Germany's problem. Cargo away, Torelli shouts. Schultz begins his climb, banking left to clear the drop zone. Behind him, the next C-47 begins its run. And behind that aircraft, another and another. The formation feeds through the drop zone in a continuous stream. 3 aircraft abreast, dropping every 15 seconds, a conveyor belt of aerial supply that Germany's artillery cannot stop. Another C-47 goes down, flak through the fuselage, the aircraft breaking apart. Schultz counts 4 parachutes. The crew got out. Maybe they'll make it to Allied lines. His own aircraft shudders. Something hits the tail section. Morrison checks the controls. Still flying straight. Then we're fine. They're not fine. They're being shot at by every German within 5 miles. But the aircraft is still flying, the cargo is delivered, and Schultz can see the French countryside ahead. They're going to make it. Below, in Bastogne, Private Rowe watches the sky fill with parachutes and starts to cry. He's not ashamed. Half the men around him are crying too. Because those parachutes mean morphine. They mean bandages and plasma and sulfur drugs. They mean he won't have to watch any more men scream themselves to death. Corporal Malarkey stands outside his foxhole staring upward, laughing like a madman. Blythe stands beside him, also laughing. They're both crying and laughing and watching the most beautiful sight they've ever seen. Proof that they're not abandoned, not forgotten, not alone. General McAuliffe watches from his command post window. His staff officers cluster around him. Nobody speaks. The moment is too big for words. 851 tons of supplies fall from the sky. In his observation post, Lieutenant Weber lowers his binoculars. His hands shake. Feldwebel Koch has stopped counting aircraft. The numbers are meaningless now. 200, 300. What difference does it make? We can't win this, Koch says quietly. Weber knows he should reprimand such defeatist talk. Instead, he nods. Because Koch is right. Any nation that can put 241 aircraft over a surrounded town, in daylight, through concentrated flak, while hundreds of fighters provide escort, that nation cannot be defeated by artillery and winter and stubborn defence. The Americans have just demonstrated what industrial supremacy looks like, and Weber, watching from his cold stone wall, understands that the war is lost. The drop lasts 42 minutes. By 0954 hours, the last C-47 clears Bastogne airspace. American fighters make final strafing runs, silencing the last German guns, then form up to escort the transports home. The sky empties. The parachutes settle like multicoloured snow across the town. The silence feels strange. Then the 101st moves. Supply parties sprint from cover, grabbing bundles, hauling them to distribution points. Officers organise the chaos, ammunition to the line companies, medical supplies to the aid stations, food to company kitchens. Within 30 minutes, the entire division is rearming. Private Rowe receives a case of morphine syrettes. He holds it like a holy relic, then immediately starts treating the wounded who've been waiting in agony. The screaming stops. Men who've been rigid with pain relax as the morphine hits. Some sleep for the first time in days. Corporal Malarkey gets a case of .30 caliber ammunition and a box of grenades. His squad loads magazines, fills grenade pouches, cleans weapons with oil that arrived in the supply drop. They're still cold, still hungry. The food will take time to distribute, but they're no longer rationing every bullet. McAuliffe tours the perimeter that afternoon. Everywhere he goes, men are eating chocolate bars, loading fresh ammunition, pulling on winter coats that finally arrived. Morale, already stubborn, transforms into something harder, something unbreakable. "Think the Germans noticed?" Lieutenant Colonel Kinnard asks. McAuliffe looks at the horizon, where German positions ring the town. "Oh, they noticed. In German headquarters, the reports come in throughout the day. The American resupply was complete, overwhelming, unstoppable. Losses minimal. Perhaps 20 aircraft destroyed, another 30 damaged. But 190 plus aircraft completed their drops. The psychological impact is catastrophic. German soldiers who were told the Americans were trapped, starving, defeated, watched hundreds of aircraft operate with impunity over their own positions. Morale collapses. Desertions increase. Officers struggle to maintain offensive operations. By evening, General Lieutenant Heinrich von Luttwitz, commanding X-Upsefia Panzer Corps, confronts reality. Bastogne cannot be taken by siege. The Americans will never run out of supplies, not while they control the air. December 26, 1944, 16:45 hours, Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams' 37th Tank Battalion smashes through German lines south of Bastogne. Sherman tanks roll into town, their crews grinning, paratroopers climbing onto the hulls to shake hands. The siege is broken. Patton's Third Army has arrived. The 101st holds its position for 3 more weeks, now as part of offensive operations rather than desperate defence. The Battle of the Bulge turns decisively. German forces, overstretched and undersupplied, begin withdrawing. By late January, the Bulge is eliminated. Hitler's last gamble fails. The Bastogne resupply becomes legend. Over 4 days, December 23rd to 26th, aerial operations deliver 962 tons of supplies. Only 19 C-47s are lost in combat, far fewer than predicted. The mission proves that air superiority wins wars. Captain Schultz flies 6 more resupply missions before the siege ends. He survives the war, returns to Milwaukee, flies for Northwest Airlines for 30 years. He never forgets the sight of those parachutes falling over Bastogne. General McAuliffe receives the Distinguished Service Cross. His NUTS reply becomes American legend, a symbol of defiance that resonates through generations. The 101st Airborne stand at Bastogne cements their reputation as elite troops. They'll fight through Germany, liberate concentration camps, reach Hitler's Eagle's Nest. But veterans will always say Bastogne was their finest hour. For Lieutenant Weber, the war ends 4 months later in a POW cage. He survives, returns to Germany, becomes a teacher. He never tells his students about the day he watched 241 American aircraft fill the sky. Some memories are too bitter to share. Today, Bastogne hosts annual commemorations. A museum preserves the story. Veterans, now all gone, returned year after year to walk the perimeter they held, to remember friends who didn't make it home. The tactical lessons endure. Berlin Airlift, 1948. Kaysan, 1968. Every modern aerial resupply operation traces its lineage to Bastogne. The principle remains constant. Control the air, supply your forces, win the war. But beyond tactics and strategy, Bastogne represents something else. It's proof that courage paired with overwhelming industrial might can achieve the impossible. It's validation that logistics wins battles as surely as bullets. And it's a reminder that sometimes the sky opens, help arrives, and surrounded men discover they were never truly alone. 241 aircraft, 851 tons of supplies. One message to friend and enemy alike. America doesn't abandon its soldiers. The 101st never surrendered. They never even considered it. Because when the fog lifted on December 23, 1944, they looked up and saw their answer written across the winter sky in aluminum and parachute silk. Hold the line. We're coming. And America kept that promise.